And hello, everyone. Welcome to this edition of The Power of I. With what's going on in the world over and how it has impacted us, your overwhelming response to this first virtual conference is testimony to how important this topic is today than ever before. We have an exciting lineup of events and topics to discuss, starting with the leadership, setting the right tone with this CEO panel discussion. Thank you, leaders, for taking time to be here and share your perspectives on this very important and relevant topic. I have always believed that inclusion starts with me, and as a whole person, I bring my inclusive self to work. And this starts from home. I often take the liberty to give my personal example of how I have learned in this space. And I'd like to take this opportunity to share one such learning on leveraging privilege and power. You know, my daughter is an artist and she has sold over 150 paintings. On her first exhibition, and that time we were in Vietnam, she met with some special children, and some interactions with them prompted her to share with us her desire to give away all the proceeds from the sale of her paintings to support special needs children. When I asked her why she was doing that, she said, "As a special child myself, I'm very lucky to have you. You're there with me. And as my parents, you afford everything for me. So I want to help others. I want to include everybody. I don't want to leave anyone behind." And these were her words. Over the years, she has grown up as a socially responsible young adult. She's a self-advocate. She's spoken at the United Nations. She's a model. She's a contributing member to the society. Her words of wisdom at various points in time always guided us on how we can leverage our power and privilege, not just for us, but also for others who can be positively impacted. I also realized that you need to understand how you are privileged to be able to realize how to use it. But at the workplace, this is quite challenging, and it can likely create imbalance between people and can manifest as an exclusion. And this is what I think we must take a proactive measure to prevent. Think of the last time someone in your organization raised a red flag and they were the ones actually impacted. This can be personal whining or self-serving and cause additional instead of actually resolving. On the other hand, think of a situation, someone pointed out injustice, but they had nothing to do to gain or lose from it being corrected. Right or wrong, this opens the conversation very differently. When a privilege-aware person initiates the conversation, it changes the landscape and perception of improving the inclusion process. It is in this context that we are today discussing how we can leverage privilege and power to work and address inequities in our workplace. I am delighted to have with us some of our brightest and successful leaders who have been pursuing their journey of diversity and inclusion culture in their organizations, just as they would any other business goal. They come from different industry verticals, and I'm sure this will be an enriching conversation. Delighted to introduce Shukla Chandra, Senior Managing Director, GE License and Technology Ventures. Shukla Chandra is responsible for technology transfer and licensing collaborations for GE Technologies globally. Shukla, in her last role, was responsible for developing and executing multi-generation product and commercialization strategies for GE's rural electrification platform. She's a board member of Alliance for Rural Electrification, which is based out of Belgium. Shukla has several patents and is registered with the US Patent and Trademark Office. She also co-led the GE Women's Network Initiative for India for the last 5 years. Welcome, Shukla, to this panel discussion. Sanjay Menon, Managing Director, Publicis Sapient India. In his role, Sanjay is responsible for driving the strategy, capability development, and growth of Sapient's India presence and maintain its status as hub of the company's globally distributed delivery network. Sanjay has been instrumental in growing Sapient's India operations since its inception. He has served in various business and delivery roles, including running key account P&Ls, managing global delivery for some of the business units, as well as growing digital marketing services capability from India. Welcome, Sanjay. Next, we have Tarun Sarin, Managing Director at Sun Life, Asia Services Centers, a 3,500 plus people entity providing technology solutions, business operations, and knowledge service support to Sun Life's global businesses. As a leadership member of digital business and technology solutions at Sun Life, Tarun is responsible for leading the entire SC organization, driving strategic imperatives and building a future-ready organization and capabilities, delivering solutions, driving innovation and operational excellence. He is passionate about establishing a great place to work, building world-class values and mission-centric organizations, creating vibrant, highly inspiring places and environments to work, driving customer and teams enduring all-round success, contributing materially to business growth and inspiring a level 5 leadership. Welcome, Tarun. It's my pleasure to welcome Thibaut Kune, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Pernod Ricard, South Asia. Thibaut is a transformational leader with passion for bringing people together, an avid brand builder with a vision to inspire and lead diverse teams. Thibaut has held significant leadership positions in Pernod Ricard, Brazil, France, and South Asia. Thibaut is known as a passionate leader for the importance he places on people and their growth. In his last leadership role with Pernod Ricard, Brazil, Thibaut successfully implemented a robust and successful management model, leading the organization as a CFO and also as the President and CEO. In his current role, Thibaut proudly champions a world of conviviality as Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Pernod Ricard, South Asia. Welcome, Thibaut. So a warm welcome to all of you once again. Let me start by asking each one of you, what's been your personal journey and experience in the space of inclusion and diversity in your organization? Could be either in India or an overseas experience. So Shukla, can I start with you, please?
Of course, thank you so much, and thanks for giving me this platform. Very happy to be here. So I've been with GE for 21 years, and GE is a company which is active in about 170 countries all across the globe. And so when we are talking about, power of inclusion and individuals and equality, in my experience in this organization globally, it starts from the top, in the sense like our chairman, Larry Kaup, he has been driving this inclusion and the culture of inclusion and diversity right from his office. And as you rightly said, it's not just an initiative, it's part of our life. It's part of any other business deliverables or business KPIs. So it is not something, and it touches every employees we have everywhere in the globe. So I personally come from a family of, my father, they were 6 brothers and they had 9 daughters. So I come from a family of all women.
Can I pause you for a minute here, please?
Yes.
It would help if you can keep your mic closer.
Okay. Can you hear me better? Okay, great. So I come from a family where, I have grown up with a lot of women around me, very strong women, and I have always seen encouragement and got a lot of empowerment from, our earlier generations. So I've been very fortunate about it. So I come with that kind of background, but when I joined workforce, I realized that that is not the place everywhere. So in my journey with GE, we do have a centralized, focal focus areas or priorities, I would say, around inclusion and diversity. But we are very, very open to, different regions, different country would have different challenges, because society is different. What people face is different. Where you are on the maturity level of technology, it's different. So education level is different. So we are very flexible on where you are and where you're working from, and look at, what should we do on the diversity and inclusion space. But one thing runs common in every country, which is, when we are talking about inclusion, we are talking about removal of unconscious bias. We are talking about walking the talk. We are talking about leaders taking the ownership and the responsibility of driving this and being a role model around it. So those are the things which are very horizontal and same for everywhere. So for India and South Asia, which I lead the inclusion and diversity for GE, our main focus areas are, of course, gender, because that continues to be a big challenge for our region. And since I come from a high-tech industrial company, having talent in having women in that space is it's difficult. It's still very challenging. So that continues to be a big focus, and I'm sure I'll get more opportunity to talk about the initiatives we have. Another focus area for us is sexual orientation and LGBTQ plus. We realize that we have to create a very safe space in our workplace so that people, when they come and join us, they feel included, they feel that they have the equal opportunity, and they have every possible, avenues to grow. And the last one, which we are putting a lot of focus on, is people with special needs, and it could be physical, it could be mental. And I will not say that we have, achieved everything, and we are doing great. I always feel that we have miles to go, because these are areas where you can do so much. So, but these three, and then we also are discussing a lot about another diversity issue, which is generation. We have a very, very young workforce, and we also have people who have very, very experienced workforce. So how do we work together? How do we engage together? How do we make sure that our teams are engaged, they connect with each other? So those are the focus areas we have. It's a continuous learning and journey for us, and I'm super excited to be part of it, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from the other leaders in the panel what they are doing in their space.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's a wide spectrum of diversity strand that you're looking at. Great, wonderful. Tarun, would you like to go next?
Thank you so much, Kanan, for having me here, and it's great to meet all of you. I'll give at least your first question a different slant, if I may. I'll start a little bit about 30 seconds on the personal side. So I do come from a family where leadership was quite rampant. Leadership in the corporate world. My dad was a managing director of Siemens. Grandfather, great grandfather were businessmen, and they were freedom fighters. I've had assassinations in the family. I have a grandmother who's also gone to war. So when I grew up, it was men and women. Not only my grandmother, there were a couple of other of my aunts who were equally, advanced in terms of making a purpose happen, if I can put it that way. And I grew up in a family where everybody spoke like a leader. Fearlessness, courage was just right there. It was just par for the course in the family. People have laid down lives and so on and so forth. So when I grew up, I didn't really see a difference between, if I just take gender for a minute, that men are better leaders, women, that thought never crossed my mind until I reached workforce, and I realized that the world is not what I've really experienced as a child. So that's one. Second, I saw really multiple people assembling across a cause and making something happen, whether it was my ancestors. So purpose become a very, very, very used word in a family, and very deep word. What are, not only your personal ambition, but purpose, how does it affect others? So I think that's something that stayed with me. And over the last 27 years that I worked and have had the privilege of working for some, premier companies, right from Capgemini in the United States to GE aircraft engines and setting it up in India, Microsoft, EMC, Deutsche Bank, Barclays. All of these companies, I've raised my hand to lead a great place to work or making a vibrant workplace and figuring out how to do. And diversity and inclusivity has been a huge part of that, because I love what your daughter said. Leave no one behind. And when India was fighting for freedom, that's what it was, right? It was taking the entire country together. So I do think that the corporate world and the companies that we represent should be a microcosm of the world. So, right, because we serve diverse clients. So in whatever we manufacture, product or service or services, it should take the diversity of our clients into account. Example being LGBT, having insurance policies that honor LGBT dependents, for example. And we shouldn't have any input bias. The workforce itself should represent the diversity of this wonderful world. So I think that's really become a cause as in terms of how we work. It should just be a natural. But I agree with Shukla that there's still miles to go for us. But I'm very, very optimistic, and I have a very optimistic viewpoint of the corporate world, because I think we do lead by example. Yes, you want to do more, but we do lead by example, and it's a business imperative as well. So I'm looking forward to the discussion, but I'm so glad that I'm with all of you.
Thank you, Tarun, and a very, very rich experience that you bring to the table, and very purpose driven. Wish you all the very best. Sanjay, can we go next?
Sure. And thank you, Karan. Good afternoon, everyone. Quite excited to be here today and hoping to learn a lot, right? And continue my journey on just, on trying to be a more inclusive leader. I think, I like the frame, right? There are really two parts to it. So one, I can talk a little bit about my personal journey. Come from an armed forces family, which is grown up all parts of the country. So I almost took at least diversity of culture and language as something that always happened, right? And it's much later on in life you realize that not everybody has maybe the joy of making a journey, at least like the one I had. But to me, I think even as a child, growing up in typically back in the 80s, right? Your parents told you about be good to all, be humane to all, be just to all, be fair to all, and those are just values you grew up with. And I remember even now that when my summer vacation, as vacations were then spent, you went to your grandmother's house. That was about as much of tourism as you got. And at my grandmother's place, I used to get really offended with the fact that some people weren't allowed to enter the house, or she would very clearly segregate. And I would just go completely nuts, saying, "Look, this doesn't make any sense, right? Why are you doing this?" And so my parents would understand where I was coming from. They were like, "Look here, it's just too ingrained. It can't change." So I think you got to realize when you can't change something, and that always stuck with me, saying, if we truly believe that it's about being fair to all, then how can we condone something like this? But anyway, that, as a child, you tend to kind of move on with life. And to me, the same journey, I think, is when I was at the workplace. I realized, to me, I think the growing up part was to realize that one is what can you do to change, right? But the other one, as a leader, what are you expected to change? And I think there was a big shift in this thing where it really starts with your own journey. So to me, also an aha moment I had, because I always had this sense of saying I'm a very inclusive leader, I'm a very approachable leader. Again, back to the childhood, be fair to all, just to all. And I went through my IDI assessment, and I was like, I've got a lot to learn myself, and that was like a massive searchlight turned on myself, and I was like, there's so much I have to change, there's so much I have to evolve. And to me, as an organization, we're truly globally seamless, right? So Publicis Sapient, we're about 15,000 people globally. Every office is an integrated part of the same company culture. Inclusive collaboration is one of our core values. So everybody's again got the right intent in saying, hey, we need to build a more diverse and inclusive organization. But my own learning has also been as a leader, and a very humbling one, right? That it is not a process; it is one of mindset, right? So as an inherent leader, you think you dive into the process of saying, what are the levers I need to fix, right? What are the metrics, and then how do you make them move? And then you realize that what comes in the way is mindset. And my own education has now been that if you try to move metrics without moving mindset, it's a very slow victory, right? So really, our journey has been about how do we truly move, and therefore while it's been humbling, it's also been a very inspiring journey, because the wheels are moving, we're making the right steps in the right direction. and I agree with everybody who said before this, right? There's plenty to do. There's so much more we can do, but I think there is definitely the direction of travel is the right one. And I think, that's why I love the power of I, right? The I also starts with the individual as in the leader, saying, what difference am I making versus, is my job to allow others to go make a difference, or is my job to make sure that I'm making a difference as well? So that's been at least, my journey so far. Really looking forward to the conversation from here on as well.
Wonderful, wonderful, Sanjay. Thank you for those meaningful insights. Thank you very much. Thibaut, can I request you to share your thoughts?
Sure. Thank you, Kanan. And thank you, After, as well, for the invitation today. And very nice to be with this panelists as well on this discussion today. So again, it's very interesting because I guess we are sharing the same things and very close by in terms of either our individual experiences, which is a very important piece. Again, you need to live it by yourself. You need to feel it by yourself. And I think the emotional part as well play a big piece, either on the professional side. And again, we see more and more, as we said, organization not only going in this direction, but step by step embracing it and acknowledging that it is a journey as well. So I'll share a few things, same as Sanjay, about my personal side of things. Again, diversity, as we know, and inclusion has different sides. Mine was to be, since I am 5 years old, a French person living outside of France. And I've been somehow always an intruder in many countries around the world. So I spent my childhood, most of my childhood in Africa, but in the middle of nowhere in Africa. So I was the only white kid amongst plenty of friends, but black people, and I was trying to make my way in this environment. Same thing along the various countries I went through in the US, in Latin America, and also in my first stay in India when I arrived 15 years ago. Again, I arrived in Panoramika, India. Back then, I was the CFO back then. And I remember my first executive committee meeting, jump in the room just a few days after landing in India. And everybody started speaking Hindi. and I obviously was not really feeling included in the conversation back then. So I think that the point here is we will all have plenty of experiences around diversity, obviously different ones, but highlighting the importance of the topic, understanding that it is evolving fast. It might be the hot topic today, but it has always been around, and the necessity to move forward, and the need, which is in my view massively important, to be sincere and authentic about it, which is why personal experience will enrich a lot the conversation. And just moving to the professional side, again, I've seen diversity and what we have done in our journey in Panoramika for the last 10 years. Really, we have focused a lot on the reality is many organizations were not doing anything before that. And then it depends on the country. Many countries are ahead, and some other countries are late in the journey, in the agenda. And I think the point which was raised earlier about purpose is fundamental. There is some element of social justice, which is naturally so. You buy in, you feel it, you believe in it. But there is also an element of purpose, which is fundamental. You call it either your business purpose, your company purpose. Our purpose is creating conviviality. You mentioned it earlier on. And conviviality is about human relationship. It's about tolerance. It's about meeting people, enjoying interactions, human connections as well. So it ties a lot with what we are doing internally. It's not only about our consumers, it's about our people, it's about our workplace. So all in, I think that the various words that were mentioned about having a purpose, walking the talk, the sincerity and the authenticity of what we want to do on that front is fundamental. So looking forward also for the discussion.
Wonderful. Actually, while this may serve as an introduction as such, but there's so much that we have got to pick up from your own experiences. And very clearly what comes through is the fabric of inclusion that you want to establish within your organization, and then everything else follows, right? So that's one thing I like. But the point is that, Thibaut, you mentioned that this is a hot topic, right? Suddenly diversity has become like a contest. Everybody wants to do tick in the box, right? And everybody's issue is bigger than the next person's issue. And if that is what we are going to focus, I think that's a losing proposition. And it really takes away the focus on the real issue, right? And we all want to take affirmative action, right? And that's the way we can correct patterns of discrimination. Having said that, right, there has been, in my own experience, and I'm sure you will agree to that, there has been a lot of pushback. And many times when you talk about equity or when we talk about inclusion and talking about diversity, there is always this point that keeps coming back. It's about reverse discrimination, right? So what I want to ask you next is, as leaders, how have you faced these pushbacks? How have you managed them in the pursuit of a focused diversity initiative? Thibaut, you want to continue the conversation and move on?
Oh, sure. Again, I'll be very frank. I believe we started the agenda by trying to tick the box in Panorica globally. Again, the first element was we are starting getting questions from investors, from shareholders, etc. So we need to do something about the situation which is abnormal. And the reality is, yes, we make some choices which were probably precipitated, and we were on a learning curve as far as Panorica and as many organizations are concerned. And I think those companies that started early the journey have come to a level of maturity, which is much stronger. And it all goes, in my view, back to the point of resistance in most of organizations. It all goes about education. It's just that education takes time, and you cannot expect this and your cultures to evolve from one day to the next one, and we need to be knowledgeable about it. So I think step by step, you need to move from a resistance to an adherence mode within your organization. You will face resistance, and to be honest, this is where, back to the point of the leaders of the organization, we need to stand still on the convictions that we have, on the sincerity behind the intention, because they are good intentions, and you will have to face it. And to be honest, sometimes you have to be tough against resistance. That's the situation in India, as in many countries. And one day, step by step, there will be much more adherence than resistance. And it will naturally flow, and you will naturally get this culture that you are looking for in terms of inclusion and diversity. So I think you have to learn to be tough from time to time with resistance. You have to listen, to speak a lot to everyone. That's a must, because you have to listen to this wariness that you have. You know, we have a saying in Panorica that those days it's not good to be a French person in the finance function, because we have too many and we need to evolve. That's a true reality. And one day I was told by our group HR, you are French, you are in finance, I'm coming from finance, probably some 12 years ago. I'm not sure about your future in Panorica. And this was during a finance conference, the finance meeting. So again, I think you have both sides, because it creates wariness, and you need to see that it's not the end of the world first, and things will evolve naturally. It will take time, and you need to accept it, and you need still to perform. We must not forget performance as well in this entire discussion.
Right. Thank you, Thibaut. Tarun, you've managed a very large organization, 3,500 plus, with a lot of them, many of them field staff, frontline. How have you managed some of this pushback?
Yeah, we do have programs, so we have advocacy for certain groups. We do have focus on women leadership and so on and so forth. I've driven such programs in other organizations as well. I'll use a word I don't know if a better word. I guess my English is getting limited when I think about this topic, but I'll say, personally, I like to play offense versus defense on this topic, meaning we got to do more for people to deliver higher outcomes, is how I see this, right? So it's meritocracy. However, everybody is going to be the same lens in terms of the output from each team. You measure outputs, but there is going to be help in terms of the inputs, where there's coaching, where there's training, and different groups and sections and different individuals have different needs. And we are in the business here to ensure that, to the extent possible, we are meeting those needs for people to perform at the highest levels. So I think of it that way, and that's how I frame the conversation. And there's fairness in terms of performance evaluation. I think, Kanan, you mentioned performance management. I think there's fairness in there, and we've got to ensure there's fairness in there. But sometimes the data speaks for itself. You look at how many of a certain group, women, for example, have grown in the organization over the last 5 years? How many men are high potential as a percentage? How many women? I mean, you use all these standard measures to see where you are at. And then I like what Sanjay mentioned. Ultimately, it's really the culture and the mindset, because all these are, KPIs, we shouldn't have to measure them. I mean, we should be now almost in a world where we don't have to measure any of these things, but we still have to until we graduate to the next orbit in terms of inclusion. So meritocracy, and then whatever is needed, coaching, so on and so forth, to ensure that everybody is included in terms of taking the organization's purpose forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, you talked about meritocracy, and many times when I have conversations with middle managers and the second level, third level managers, they often ask me this question: are you asking us to compromise meritocracy by taking on more diverse set of people? What do you have to say? I have to always tell them that we are not advocating compromising meritocracy, right? That's not the point when we talk about diversity. Are you looking at anybody whom you are excluding, right? So these are the questions that comes up for discussion.
I'll add one more point, and I like to say offense. Certain things that you want to push the agenda forward and make it real. I said every manager who's got a team of 50, identify one person that should be promoted twice this year. Right? And we established that program. Yeah. And it really shifts the thinking to, because people 1 out of 50, what are the 49 people going to think? Well, you got to choose, and do we have those kind of high performers? And then it's going to solve a broader organization problem, which I had in mind, which is by the time somebody gets to a VP, SVP level in technology, you're not coded. Your coding was like 10 years ago. How can somebody who's entry level get to a VP level in 12 or 13 years in an organization? This is one of the ways you get super performers to the next level, and you coach them on EQ and other things. But so that's changed. So it was really about meritocracy. I said, do you have somebody who's even more, higher out there? And let's look at that.
Right.
So Kanan, sorry, can I just add one thing quickly?
Yeah, Thibaut.
When we started this journey a few years ago in Brazil, again, we started putting groups together. So group for women, group for LGBT, and group for disabled people. And rapidly we saw this was the wrong way to tackle the problem. The right way to tackle the problem is to have a group focusing on women inclusion and diversity, but bringing men in the discussion.
Right.
The same thing as far as the other groups. So it's really about almost including the resistance or this profile that believe that something is going wrong into the discussion and the conversation to be part of the solution.
Yeah. Employee resource groups definitely work. Yeah. Shukla, what's your experience? Pushback, meritocracy, and the questions that get asked when you talk about driving diversity and inclusion.
Right. The reverse discrimination, I mean, it's been discussed everywhere. So, I get asked that question all the time, sometimes by our frontline managers that, okay, so we are going to be hiring diverse talent, but are we going to, lowering the bar? Meritocracy is one thing which gets discussed. So my reaction to that is that the world is 50-50, right? There are 50% men, 50% women. There are a certain percent of LGBTQ community out there. So when we look around and see our workforce, do we have it? If we don't, then we haven't reached there. So let's talk about equality, equal opportunity. So when I'm hiring for a post, doesn't matter what it is, whether a man can do it, a woman can do it, whether we can have a disabled person or special need can do it, forget about all those. You have a position, you're going to hire. To me, it is very important that the slate needs to be equal. Till the time we reach a point when I am looking at 10 resumes and it's 5 and 5, then we are giving the equal opportunity to everybody. Then we can hire. Till the time we reach that level, we need to put objective, intense focus on making sure that we reach there. So yes, there are sometimes the pushback is needed, and in my mind, I'm very clear that till we reach the natural state we see inside a corporate, we should be driving that with objectivity. Now, once you bring that diverse talent in your organization, then inclusion and belonging becomes so very important, because you can bring in a talent. I mean, you hire somebody, you become focused, and then the culture becomes so important, because if they come and see microaggression in everyday's life,
if your entire organization, every person doesn't understand the meaning of inclusion, equal opportunity, and how your horizon opens up when you have diverse perspective in completing a project, building a product, anything you do, how the productivity increases, then you lose the essence. So your tick mark, what you're talking about, I agree that unless you address the bias issue, unless you address the culture issue, that becomes a tick mark. So my experience has been that when you need to push back, you need to push back. So as you said in the introduction, I come from a manufacturing setup. GE has a huge manufacturing base in India and everywhere else. We are getting into, we call ourselves high-tech industrial, which we have the digital side, we have the manufacturing side. Now, when I look at manufacturing side, it's very difficult to get women to participate from beginning, positions in the shop floor to the management level. Now, do we need to put real intense focus to make sure that we have a diverse group? That absolutely. If that requires us to upskill a certain part of our workforce and make sure that we bring them in and then see how they grow, maybe the initial part we need to do the focus. But once they acquire the skills, what we have seen is it's an incredible growth. We have shop floor entirely managed by women in some of our manufacturing facilities, and that didn't of course happen overnight. We really had to do some focused effort there. But once they were skilled and they were given the training and given the handholding, we didn't have to look back even once. So as you said, sometimes you have to do the tough pushback, but I think it's a bigger, it's beyond what is good for an organization, good for the top line, bottom line, what is right. And this is the right thing to do. So absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's great insights. Sanjay, anything different or anything that you'd like to add on to what was discussed?
Yeah, I think you constantly hear the are we lowering the bar, right? It's like the favorite comeback as you have promotion conversations or hiring conversations or any of these. And I really like the way Tarun framed it, right? Of the outputs and the inputs, because I think there's two things here. One is, as a leader, I think you have to stand tall and you have to stand firm, right? Because as with any of these situations, and I tell people this: look here, just by fortune right now, it's my choice to make. And this is the choice I'm making, right? So a leader setting the agenda, I feel, is a first start, because the minute the leader's view on the agenda is, hey, this is a company goal, so you guys better rally around because we need to get there, to saying, as I think Sukla just said, right, this is the right thing to do, and I'm standing firmly behind it, and I'm leading by gut. See, at some point as leaders, we lead by gut. There'll be data for 80% of the world, and 20% you got to dig in and lead by gut. I think this is one of those things saying, okay, it's the right thing to do. It's my choice to make, and I'm going to stand firmly behind it. What happens because of that, I feel, is that people then start to examine the why not instead of asking questions about why. I'll give you an example. We started our women returning program in a more formal basis a few years back, and everybody said, oh my God, how will this work? These people have taken a long break. Our sector, which is core technology, is moving at a exponential speed. How can people kind of it's like trying to board a train that's already moving too fast? All of those very intellectual observations, not wrong. And we said, no, we're going to actually sponsor the training program to ensure that they get back and they're able to get into the mainstream and perform. So no different expectations of what is the outcome or what's the impact, but we will make sure that we are investing in what will it take to get there. And we started off with 5 people the first year. And this year we've done 9-fold of that in just the first 6 months. And now it's strange. I have people coming to me saying, why can't we even do more through this channel of women returning? And that's great. And to me, it's people irrespective of women or men who are asking for that, which means it's because as a leader, you have to allow the flywheel to operate to show the impact, and then it becomes more self-sustaining. But, you do face that. Like, I do that in hiring at times. And I say, look, at this particular role, we will hire a woman. Now, some people don't like me for that, but I'm like, you know what? It's my choice to make right now. And tomorrow, if it's not me and someone else, maybe they'll make a different choice. I don't know, but right now it's my choice to make. And we will hire only a woman into this role. What happens? People say, we don't find enough candidates. Okay, I'll wait longer. Wow. In the end, we always end up doing that. We end up hiring, right? So the question is again that, to your point, Sukla, that 50-50, there is talent out there in the world. The question is, are we finding talent that's more convenient to find? Exactly. Or are we, if you want to go after some certain fish, you got to go into the deep waters. It takes longer. So be it, right? But I mean, that's the only way I think change happens, right? Because change for convenience, because my learning is, again, what I tell everybody else, that we don't become diverse or more inclusive by coincidence. We'll only become that purposefully. And that purposeful agenda can only be set by the leader. And it has to be, obviously, it has to be imbibed and everybody's got to be in it together, but that agenda has got to be set by the leader.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the common thread that I hear from all of you is the intentionality that you bring as leaders into driving some of these initiatives, right? And many times, one more thing that I've seen is many times when we get these pushbacks, great amount of data and analytics of the data helps us to, push them back and tell them that this is what the data is saying. And then I think as leaders, as business managers, they begin to realize that there is a case in point. In the past, we never had this data, or we had the data, we did not mine it. Today, we are able to do it. So it's also therefore important that we have to, like how the leaders set the right tone, I think it's also important for us to teach ourselves and our employees the skill to look inward for answers, right? In addition to the various data points that are available, right? We should be asking, am I doing what I can improve the situation for somebody else? And this is where I think it requires a lot of honesty, it requires a lot of humility and all of that as managers. And I think this is where I think allies, mentors, sponsors, advocates, like all of you have been doing in your organizations, plays a very, very important role. And I'm so glad that we have you with us in this session. And I'm sure the participants have gained a lot of insights from this conversation. I'd like to take a pause here. And Tarun, you want to say something?
I think you inspired me to share something a little bit deeper. I'll share that in 5 seconds. I think you started this conversation with privilege. I certainly have felt that about my childhood, extremely privileged background. So it was really about chasing honor. You talk about power, and I'm a big one for inner power and self power. So I expect, and I want every human being to stand up for themselves. I think that helps us as leaders, stand up, be counted. We talked about purpose, something that drives me and drives many of us, as I learned from my co-panelists. Values and respect. But there's another P that I would tell you that it certainly burns in my heart. It's pain, right? I'm extremely pained when I see less inclusivity, whether it's financial inclusion, whether it's inclusion in the economy, whether it's inclusion in the workforce. Very pained. So in many ways, I've used companies and the agenda just to make sure that we are doing our bit as a leader. We have the canvas of Sun Life, canvas of Deutsche Bank, EMC, Microsoft, wherever I work, to paint the right picture, right? To do something worthwhile. And that's where many programs come from. So it's really from the heart, pain to progress, it's really pain that you don't want another human being to be less counted.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said. Very well said. I think, Lakshmi, are there any questions, Lakshmi? Manish Sharma, while many of us are invested in DEI and running several programs, measuring the success is tough. Any advice on measuring success? What is level 5 leadership? Tarun, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, I'll try to answer that very succinctly. But level 5 leadership is really about someone thinking about himself or herself less and placing the purpose of the organization and society ahead of himself and herself. Humility is natural there. And it's really about collective leadership, participative leadership to take the organization forward. It requires a different mindset and a lot of security within. I'm a big student of it. I want to continue to be a big student of it, and really take many people forward. And I expect people to walk into a company where if I'm the MD and they can't tell who the MD is because everybody is purpose oriented, thinking about the future. That's really the one way to look at it. I think the success is really about how people feel working for your company and who wants to work with you. And you can measure that in many ways. What kind of people work for you and want to work with you. And you can see that in the success of your workforce, right? The companies I've led are very niche companies. They're not 200, 300, 400,000 people. They're very, niche companies. And I think you can measure the success very easily. Sometimes it's very evident in the atmosphere. You walk around the floor and you can feel success. You see success in terms of people extending themselves more on innovation. You see, so yeah, I think the success is very easy to measure depending upon which company you are and in what stage you're working in terms of the output. I would measure the success in terms of the output and what employees are feeling, right, about the company.
Great point. Great point. Anybody else has any other point of view on this?
Yeah, again, I'm very much with Tyrone. I don't think success is anything about KPIs. Success is about your reputation, the feeling within your culture, the sense of adherence and belonging within your organization. You will feel it, you will see it from within your organization, from your employees, or from outside in as well. So I'm totally with what Tyrone was saying.
Absolutely.
Right. So I just want to add, like, this is something which is kind of a holy grail for a initiative like inclusion and diversity and equality. How do you measure success? So I just want to say that, the spirit and the letter is very easy. You have increased your diversity number from X to X plus 5. Does that mean you have success? That means that your numbers have moved. Does it mean that you have a culture which is extremely inclusive? Do you have a workforce who's engaged? So we look at not only from numbers will be there, always there, but from the culture perspective, what we look at is, are people engaged in this initiative? Is it just leader driven, or people are participating on their own, raising their hand and saying, I want to be part of this, I want to drive this? Ally networks, how much excitement we create when we say employee resource group, how many people are participating that, what are they contributing in those resource groups? So that tells you that people are engaged in those, they believe that this is important for us. And then who you want to join when you go to campuses, say, if you really do a lot, and then I have a lot of respect for this generation. And, I have a daughter, she has just finished her engineering, and the clarity in their mind in some of the issues or some of the challenges in this space, which we probably sometimes, struggle with. I see the clarity in their mind, and, they are very clear that why is it even a discussion point now? It's a given. So I feel that, those are the points which you look out for, and you measure your success in this space also in that, not just in number. So it's letter also, the policies and the number, and the spirit, which is the spirit you see in your organization.
That's right. That's right. In Chinese, there is a word called Xing, and it means the head, heart, and hand together. Right. And I think these initiatives require that kind of a focus.
Yes.
Anybody else?
No, I think the only thing I would add to that is, sometimes the metrics are important to the extent that it helps with accountability more than success. Like, are we starting to do the right things? It's like any heavy wheel. As it starts to move, it's very difficult to gauge is it getting that initial movement or not. The metrics start to help you because it just drives a little bit of clarity of focus on tasks, but it doesn't start to gain momentum unless there's been the mindset shift. And so I completely agree. The qualitative, and it's heard this wonderful term long back called the smell of the place, right? So when you get a sense of the smell of the place, which is starting to change, right? It feels different. You know that now you don't need the metrics. The point Tarun made earlier. Ideally, we should not need the metrics because that's just who we are. We aren't there as yet, so the metrics help to some extent. But I think the qualitative ones are actually what drive inspiration. It's what drives engagement. It's what drives pride, right? Where people enjoy being associated with a set of cohorts and a workplace because they feel it's truly inclusive, not because our diversity numbers doubled over the last 3 years. I mean, that's nice, but that never gives you pride. I've never seen anyone ever say, I took a lot of pride that our diversity numbers doubled, but they always will talk about a sense of pride that, hey, we just have such a more diverse and inclusive place. I enjoy going to work. I work with people who are very different, and we learn a lot from each other. Those are the kind of statements we hear, rather than saying, the numbers moved by 20% or 30%.
Absolutely.
I think I'll just add to that very quickly. I think when a lot of changes are happening in the organization in the right direction, that doesn't come from me or the leaders. I think that's a great metric. So we had blind hackathons in my previous organization. We had, and this one didn't come, this one kind of came from me. So one of my senior leaders says she cannot attend dinner meets because her mother-in-law wants her to be home at certain time. I said, great, we're going to change the dinner meets to coffee meets and lunch meetings more. We're going to do less of dinner meets, right? So and so forth. We set up a task force, and an employee had a great idea that could be converted to a project. And I said, as an MD of this company, I'm going to report to you as because I could do certain piece of work hands-on and report to you for that project. So that starts changing the culture, right? So I think those are the kind of things, if you see an organization, it can drive, it'll give a great sense of a futuristic organization, which is what we should be today.
True. That's what he said about the smelling, the smell that you get.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's another question that's come, and this is a question that gets asked even to me many times. is about, the shift working, and how do we bring about, diversity in a situation where we have shift working, shift setting, and also how do you decide on levels where diversity needs to be brought in? Which level do you need to bring in the diversity and all of that? So that's the question that's being asked. Shukla, would you like to answer that? And probably Thibu also can answer that.
Sure. So we actually have now manufacturing units where we have women who are coming in late night shifts as well. And that has happened. The primary thing which we needed to consider was safety. Because we needed to make sure it was not even a question whether we should do it or not, because some of our manufacturing units run in 3 shifts. So, but we wanted to make sure as the leadership team that, we give them the platform, then it's their choice whether they want to choose a night shift or a day shift. But as an organization, we need to make it very safe for them. So there has to be looking at the environment right now in India, and depending on where the manufacturing facilities are, we really need to take some measures around that. But once that was done, I think then we could see that it was not really that much of a challenge which we thought it would be. And I'm not going to, trivialize the whole thing. It requires a lot of focus and effort and, execution to be done before we are able to say that it is safe for everybody to come, say at 2 o'clock in the morning or go home at 12 o'clock at night. But those special arrangements can be done. So, I don't see this as a bottleneck if you really have the intention.
That's right. That's right. And there are large organizations now getting onto this. They're doing
Yes.
it successfully.
Yes.
Mondelez is doing it. HLL is doing it. PepsiCo has done it.
Mhm.
Right? Nestle is doing it. Lots of them are working around this particular issue of women coming in the night shift. Thibu, do you have any experience on this? Any?
Again, we have to assess exactly this point, and in our industry, being on the manufacturing side, so in our sales team in particular, this is an important topic. We are in the business of alcohol, in the business of consumer experience, consumption, etc. So naturally, the topic about going out in the evenings, in particular, obviously excluding the specific period that we have been facing for the last 18 months now, is a very relevant and important one. We are assessing the safety, as Sukla was mentioning, quite importantly. This is a key element because we naturally want everybody in our organization to be working in a safe environment, safe conditions, safe place. So this is very important. I don't think we are there yet as an organization. This is a permanent topic that we are focusing on. Is there any specific strategy? I think it's all about assessing the situation, the location, the places where we believe it's safer. Large cities, and Mumbai is a place where we are not seeing the same challenges that we might see in other parts of India at this point of time. So yes, we would tend to favor certain areas versus others and expecting things to evolve naturally so. But back to the second element of the discussion about the levels, I don't think we have any intention to be more focused on the A, B, C level on the top of the organization, on the bottom of the organization. The topic is cross-organization. We want diversity coming at all levels of the organization. It cannot be limited because that was probably the beginning of the challenge that everybody was facing. No, diversity, specifically gender diversity, will be in marketing, will be in HR, will be in communication, and we will forget about the sales organization and operations. That's what most organizations would face across the world. So the challenge is to ensure that it is inclusive across the function, that it is everybody's responsibility from top to bottom of the organization, from the leadership side of things, because that's generally the end of the story. And we tend to start by the bottom, but it has to be starting at the top as well, and it has to be across all levels. And we, I believe, we are doing it on purpose across the various levels.
Yeah. Sanjay, possibly you can take this last one. How do you differentiate between advancing gender agnostic opportunities with preferential hiring, especially when I hear about gender specific roles only?
Yeah, that's a great one, right? And I think I gave that example as well when I was talking. See, I think it's definitely a balance, but the thing to keep in mind is it's not like you're only hiring one of a certain kind of role, right? So for me, let's say if you're going and hiring VPs of technology, we're going to be hiring a whole bunch of them in a year, right? What I found is if you really want to make sure that you're pressure testing the system of how much are we able to change, are we really on the right path, are we making the right momentum, is to pick one or two roles and say, this is what we're going to do here, right? And in a way, it's our ability to mature and say, yep, we can move fast, we can move quickly. On the other ones, I think a point that Sukla made, I completely agree with. We want to have an equally diverse, let's say the last line you look at before you make an offer to someone, at least in all the roles that you're looking at. Because it's, again, you go back to saying, if you look at the market and you say, okay, hey, why are 90% of the resumes, and therefore when you get to the final shortlist, it's usually 2 men, right? Why is that the case? Why can't it be 2 men, 2 women? And then we make a choice of who's the best candidate, right? Or 1 man, 1 woman, or any other, but at least it's got to be a diverse mix of where we get to. That is that's a muscle change. So it is not about saying that, hey, I want to, and I know this very quickly gets tagged as reverse discrimination. The idea is saying, unless we are purposefully indexing the system back, the system, let's all admit it, we wouldn't be having this conference otherwise. The system is indexed the wrong way, right? We're trying to index it back. It will look like, yes, at some level it is sponsored, it is required, and that's just the way it is. I mean, to me, but the idea is not to take away from the overall meritocracy of the system. There's a balance there. But in some specific instances, you have to be able to take a stand to drive the change that we need as well. Because I go back to saying, otherwise you're waiting for it to happen by coincidence, rather than purposefully move something.
That's right. That's right. Thank you very much. I think we had just about managed to, productively use the 1 hour. Very meaningful discussion. And what I really liked about is truly, you have brought in the concept of intentionality, whether it is pushing back the naysayers, pushing back on the agenda, using data to ensure that we get it right and we can send the right communication around. That's something very, very important, and that's the only way I think we can bring in more traction to diversity and inclusion within the organization, right? It is said that diversity and inclusion is not about agreeing, it's about understanding, and I have very, very fond hope that we will make great strides in the coming years in this journey, and I'm sure that we have Avatar to support each and every organization in this journey, and we are happy to do that. Thank you, Shukla. Thank you, Tarun. Thank you, Tibu. Thank you, Sanjay, for your presence and your time for actively engaging in this conversation. And it was very rich experience that I've had and huge takeaways for me as well. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you. And thank you, participants.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Kanan. Thank you.